Today we're going to look at oxygen supply to the muscles, use of muscles, overuse of muscles, what actually happens. So oxygen supply and cellular respiration. The cellular respiration part to me is a little bit of review from biology. So the first step in cellular respiration is glycolysis. Glycolysis breaks down glucose. Very few ATP, not a lot of energy is produced during this step. ATP then, because very little is produced here, it needs oxygen. Oxygen is needed for actual cellular respiration, for Krebs cycle, so that it can use the oxygen and produce more ATP by breaking down glucose in those mitochondria. So hemoglobin in red blood cells brings oxygen to the muscle. So your red blood cells carry oxygen through your bloodstream, very important to get oxygen to the muscles. The pigment myo, remember myo means muscle, so myoglobin stores the oxygen once it gets to the muscle. Hemoglobin carries it to the muscle. Myoglobin stores the oxygen in the muscle. So during rest or light to moderate activity, we have enough oxygen to support respiration. That storage in that myoglobin, there's enough there. It supplies for cellular respiration. Energy is easily available. When we have strenuous exercise, we may encounter this oxygen deficiency or an oxygen debt where our body's not getting enough oxygen. Then pyruvic acid is formed and it is broken into lactic acid, and lactic acid then will build up in your muscles, and lactic acid is what can cause that burning in your muscles and sore muscles after you've had strenuous exercise. So those sore muscles that you have are a result of your muscles not having enough oxygen, and that happens during strenuous activity. Lactate then is the end product of lactic acid, and it's going to diffuse out of the muscle cells and eventually go to the liver. Your liver cells will then take that lactate, eventually turn it back to glucose, and once all of that lactic acid is out of your muscles, then your muscles are no longer sore. Oxygen then refers to that amount. So we have this deficiency. We don't have enough oxygen for good cellular respiration. Oxygen debt is the amount of oxygen needed, or that the liver cells require to convert that lactate back to glucose. So it's the amount of oxygen needed. Plus, the muscle cells will then need to produce more ATP and creatine, get everything back to that normal starting position. Repaying an oxygen debt may take several hours. Notice when you do have strenuous exercise, you breathe heavily. That's one way that your body tries to collect more oxygen. Physical training does help increase your muscles' capacity to improve energy production. This is why, like if you go out for sports, right now it's basketball. That first couple days of basketball, you run a lot, your muscles are sore. As you start to condition, your muscles get stronger, and that increases their capacity to hold that oxygen, and that's why your muscles don't get sore as much when they are in better condition. Here is just kind of a review of how glycolysis, cellular respiration works. Glucose is broken down out in the cytoplasm. This is going to enter the mitochondria, citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. These are the two parts of cellular respiration that produce the most energy. Here you can see, kind of interesting, low to moderate intensity, so walking, things like that. It's going to use glycolysis. It's very simple. I'm not going to have an oxygen debt where high intensity exercise I'm going to. fatigue. I'm assuming everyone has had some muscle fatigue at some point. Even carrying a suitcase, like if you're going on the plane, or a baby, carrying a baby around for a long period of time. When a muscle loses its ability to contract during strenuous exercise, it's referred to as fatigue. So even like lifting weights, you know, your first reps of lifting weights, oh, this is easy. And by the time you get to your third rep, it's like, oh my gosh, our third set of reps, those weights feel a lot heavier. That's because of fatigue. What fatigue usually comes from is electrolyte imbalances. This is where your Gatorade comes in and publicizes with, and decreased ATP levels. Lactic acid probably also plays a part in this, but is not completely understood by scientists yet. So imbalance of electrolytes, your body, you need to replenish those salts, sodium chloride, potassium chloride, all of those ions that your body needs. If you experience a muscle cramp, that's due to a lack of ATP that's needed to change or return calcium ions back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum so that the muscle fibers can relax. Calcium ions, they also talk about potassium. Calcium and potassium work together a lot. So if you have muscle cramps, if you experience them quite often, some people are more prone to it. Potassium, they talk about bananas. Quite honestly, a good baked potato probably has as much potassium as anything else. And calcium, drinking milk. A good supply of calcium will help cut down on cramps. Heat production, whenever you exercise, you're going to produce heat, and basically that's all that's on this slide. Cellular respiration, one of the byproducts is heat, so heat is lost. Muscular responses, I will stop and start there next.